Welcome to SIG Testing. Again, if you're new here, feel free to unmute and just give a quick intro of yourself, like who you are, where you're here, etc.
I am first time joining here, and I'm a developer in the Google Pro team. And so I think we're gonna try to fork Pro from the testing file. So that's why I think we're gonna discuss today. Yeah, that's it.
Sweet, good to see you. All right, I think with that, yeah, Tim, feel free to take the floor.
Yeah. So as you guys probably already know that we discussed on the Slack that we have a plan to fork Pro out of the Kubernetes testing for repo. Like the reason being that first for open source, like we want to have give folks a clean like commit history for the by having a separate Pro repo for the Pro sources only. Because right now the Kubernetes testing file has a lot of commits for config and a lot of irrelevant commits come in for the Pro. So it'll be like easier for developers to have a separate repo. Also on the Google side, that we want to have a separate repo that have more like tailored for the internal developers needs, especially like on the Garrett side. We most of the users on the our side use Garrett, so there are a lot of special requirements for the Garrett. So we don't want to also like we don't want to confuse external version of the Pro. So that those are the reasons we want to separate the Pro repo from the test infra. So we plan to for the open source repo, we plan to use the 6 Pro repo. I just posted in the chat. So currently the repo only has the documentation for the for Pro, and we just trying to move the code from the test infra to here, and then we'll also move the the bots and the CI/CD stuff from the not move, but trying to set up the CI/CD stuff from the to this new repo, so we can build the images, push them, and do all sort of CI/CD stuff automatically. The same user experience we have had before. Yeah, that's generally the plan here. Yeah. Co- co- did I miss something or want to add something? Yeah.
Yeah, it might be useful to talk about how we're going to track this. Like if we're using a Google Doc or if you have a GitHub issue to link there. If you don't have one ready already, if you don't have a link ready yet, we can do it after the meeting. But it'd be helpful to have some sort of link to this in the agenda, because there's going to, of course, be a lot of like individual steps to this, right? There's lots of steps to migrating the repo and moving all the CI over. So it'd be kind of helpful to track all of those, and or at least have a tracking doc that links to all those other issues and PRs that we're doing as part of this effort.
Sure. Yeah, I'll create one for this. Yeah.
And it might also be, I think, just to make sure it's super clear, we're only moving the Prow source code here. None of the configuration for Kate's Prow will move. This is just moving the source code bits and the pre-submits related to building that source code and the post-submits related to deploying it, or sorry, not deploying it, but publishing it. So creating the container images. But any like deploy jobs and all the configuration associated with Kate's Prow will remain in test infra. So there shouldn't really be any churn to users at all. What they're used to touching is going to still be there. Nobody's really touching things in the actual Prow directory when they're modifying their configs.
Do y'all anticipate any issues just with like the, I guess the stated goal of moving it out of the test info repo?
I don't think we've I mean, maybe Tim should speak to this, but I don't think we've encountered anything that we don't have a plan for. Yeah.
Arno?
I think I have like small question, but I think that's gonna come up during in the doc. How do we handle artifact release, like the container image? Do we want to keep that inside Google or release that somewhere else inside the community infrastructure? It's a open question, an async question, I think. So I just want to throw it out there.
Do you want to answer that, Tim?
Yes. Your question is for the case instance or the OSS instance. Like for so our plan is like for the OSS version, the GCP OSS instance, we're gonna use our internal. So we have like separate image registry.
We're just talking about the Kate Sprout instance, I think here. I think
okay.
all of the other instances are kind of just asides. Yeah. So I think Arnaud is asking, how are the container images used for Kate Sprout going to be published? What's going to change there, if anything? And where do we get those from? Like, where do they get stored?
Yeah, I think we're gonna still use the same registry, but the post submits from the new repo gonna push those images there. Yeah.
Okay, because my question is related to a 5-year conversation about where we're supposed to host thing regarding Prowl. So I felt like might be the opportunity to make the release process to a community infrastructure or something outside of Google. Because if we move the code base, we should also say, let's release the binary inside GitHub, release content image also inside GitHub. So we take the opportunity to do that at once instead of waiting for like another year or something else to do that. So
I see.
it's basically an idea I want to throw out there because we've been talking about moving Prowl outside of Google for 2019, if I remember. So I'm like, maybe we are getting good at basically move things outside of Google. So I'm like, maybe it's an opportunity to do something about that.
Like use the GitHub's artifact registry, right?
Yeah, because I mean, the community mainly use Prowl for anything regarding continuous deployment. So maybe we should like just set up a GitHub content registry and push that there. Simple to maintain. The GitHub CDN is amazing. So that will simplify a lot of things.
I think that's a good idea, and we should probably start on that. I'm also thinking, though, that we're going to need to, for a while, support the container images in the existing location as well, right? For backwards compatibility and other users of Prowl, we should probably have some sort of migration period. So we probably want to have like an overlap time where we have both published. So I'm thinking,
I'm not suggesting a cutover. I'm suggesting basically have. Yeah.
I'm just thinking in terms of planning and prioritization for this. It might be kind of an orthogonal effort to set up the artifact stuff. We can probably just start with moving things over to the other repo and continue using the GCR registry, and then we can also set up the new GitHub artifact stuff there, and then we can switch Kate's Prowl over to using that. I'm not as experienced with I don't have really any experience with publishing to the GitHub artifacts registry. Do we have anybody that's got some experience with that or knows about that?
I did that basically for work. Also, the other thing is like, I'm just suggesting, but basically my main point is basically release outside of Google. Could be artifact registry, could be GitHub registry, basically release outside of Google because there might be constraint related to GitHub we don't understand, or blockers related to the GitHub subscription we have. So yeah, my main idea is to get things out of Google. So if you feel like Artifact registry is better because we have integration, workflow identity, those kind of things. For all the press summit regarding image publication, that's fine. We can promote those to registry kits. I mean, I'm fine with everything as long it's outside of Google.
Yeah, or at least on the community infrastructure, right? Is that you mean the community owned projects? Is that what you're referring to? Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so yeah, we should probably consider that. I think that's probably a next step once we get the things moved over to the Prow repo. But I think that is something that we should work on. I think the GCR is like soft deprecated in favor of artifact registry. Is that the case?
Yes, yeah. So currently we still can create staging repo for the control image, but after May it's not going to be possible anymore. So I think one of the things K-Infra need to work on starting January of next year is to set up staging artifact registry repos, so we can allow the sub-project to push there.
Okay. Well, Tim, this would probably be a good thing to capture in any tracking doc you have as like a follow-up or next step, because we'll want to do this once we have the repo set up. I think it is kind of a separate follow-up effort, but yeah, like this would be, we should definitely track and plan for that.
Yeah.
Cool. Do folks have other questions as well? Actually, I guess I might have one that, apologies if it was already covered, but is there a rough like timeline for when y'all are thinking of having this done, including the like I think having the docs stood up and then sent out to community for like notice/review, but then also like I guess rough timeline for moving the stuff out of the repo?
We already started to move the code, like whatever the Pro has in the testing file right now to the new repo, and I can share the a doc pretty soon. I think next week maybe. Yeah. Yeah, basically it'll be like just letting you guys know the general steps, like the from the like the biggest chunk of works, how it looks like, and what roughly the timeline is. Yeah.
Apologies if this was covered already, but have we outlined which things we're considering Prow to take with, and how we're breaking the dependencies with the rest? We have various things that we call Prow that are kind of debatable, like the commenter robots, and we have unit tests for the config and things like that.
So overall, the like our plan is to just to make sure the product doesn't have dependency on the testing for packages. So if needed, like so right now I'm trying, before we move the code, I'm trying to, as you said, like some config testing relies on the files in the testing file. So I'm trying to move those tests out of the Pro before we do switch. So that,
well, we also have the opposite direction. We have test infra things that should stay, but they depend on like the Prow types and stuff. And right now they're kind of fairly in lockstep with Prow. They read like Prow config and test the like Kubernetes' config, but I wouldn't expect that to move. So if you don't have it already, I think one of the main things I'd be looking for is just outlining, when we say we're moving Prow, which components specifically, which parts are we saying? If we're just saying like the Prow directory, I think that's fairly straightforward, but we should probably clarify that.
Yeah, I think for the other direction, like the dependency on the prow, we can first move the code and then trying to fix those, after we repoint the test infra to the new repository, new module, and there will be a period that the test infra still have the subdirectory, and then we try to move those tests, change those tests, and then remove the pro repo eventually.
Do we also have a plan for how we're going to keep it up to date? Right now, we kind of get to cheat where, like, whenever we roll out a new version of Prow, we already have the new config types in the test infra repo because it's all in the same place. In the future, if we go to upgrade Prow, there may be some conflict between the version of the module we're depending on and the actual deployed code. Are we planning to keep those in lockstep, or?
Yeah, this is how every other Prow instance actually works, right? So the Kate's Prow instance is the only one that has this unique, that unique property. And it's basically the config checking that's being done is done with container images that are bumped with the Prow instance. So the deployment configuration is going to remain in test infra for the Kate's Prow instance. The only thing we're moving is the Prow source code. So the deployment configuration.
Yeah, I think we'll need a little bit more than those though, because we have tests that actually read in Prow config and do test infra specific tests.
Those can stay in test infra.
Sure, but we'll probably need to think about how we update the Prow module, like not just container images.
Are you saying those tests reference the Prow code?
They reference the config types at least and the config loader. So they load our local config and they check for things like if you have a job in a certain repo, it has to have a certain cluster assigned or if you that sort of thing. So some of those we can maybe switch to like generic, like partial types or something like that. They don't really depend on all of it. But in other places, we might actually want to do something like keep the version of the module we're importing matching the container images we're deploying or something like that.
Yeah, we can do that if we need to. I suspect that we won't actually need to. We can just use normal Go mod imports, and like when we do find some that there's a new field of the Prow job type that we need, then we can import update our Go mod.
Sure.
I don't think that, yeah.
It's just the sort of thing that like we should discuss that in a doc because I do think that's probably different. We have various shortcuts like that because it's all just been like piled in the repo. And I'm sure you'll remember Cole and Michelle, the like prowess test grid memes. I'm expecting some confusion in the future over like, oh, but you didn't move like the commenter robot or like which things we
in terms of
forces us to actually define what is Prow.
Yeah. Our strategy in terms of the commenter robot and other like Go dependencies like that that are referenced by both repos is to basically just move things with Prow so that we can avoid a circular dependency where Prow depends on test infra. So that's kind of our simple strategy for that. But yeah, I think that we do have and one of Tim's docs, we have been outlining the different things that need to be split up and making decisions about whether those move with Prow and how they get split up. Like I know that Tim's already working on taking some of the plugin config tests that are actually the tests are written in the Prow directory, even though they're testing the Kate's config. So we're just kind of like bifurcating some of that and moving things to more appropriate directory locations so that we can split more evenly. And by we, I mean Tim.
Yeah, we tried to do that in the past, but clearly we didn't get all of it. I'm sure we're gonna find more of that. We at least have a little bit less now. Awesome. Sorry, I don't think any of the other teals have had a chance to go over this yet with KubeCon coming and everything. But that would be my other point. We should probably not do a move this drastic during KubeCon or during sort of like Kubernetes code freeze. But otherwise, I think schedule is kind of like when you're ready.
Yeah, so we're setting everything up in parallel essentially on the new repo, and nothing will be like that. It won't become the source of. We can just kind of decide when we want to switch the source of truth, but that can be kind of done whenever. We'll do a last sync to make sure all the commits are up to date, and then switch over the source of truth.
Yeah, I think we should try to get Antonio and Patrick to look as well, and we should just like once everyone's like sure that sounds fine. I guess what I'm saying is pretty much whenever you want, just let's avoid those 2 times. I think.
What's the other time? Code freeze? Is that
KubeCon and Code Freeze.
Yeah.
Because both of those people will be really preoccupied if not looking for like testing for the break.
Yep. Well, hopefully, Code freeze is in December, right? Is that? I'm not sure. I haven't looked at the schedule. Is it? That's normally what it is, right?
I think so. We could check case.dev/release. I can't right now. I'm only on my phone.
Okay. Let me check that out then. I think it's normally in December, if I remember correctly from previous years, but yeah.
I mean, there's definitely a release pending and Code Freeze is approaching soon. Worst case, we should be able to cut over like beginning of 2024. We will be starting another cycle. Code Freeze is soon though.
I think
Code freeze is
now.
this week.
It's
like
today.
Today. Tonight.
So we can do the other side of the release then, because that should be coming.
Or we can do that post release, like if depending on the timeline or the bandwidth of Nchprod. Like I feel like it's better we do that after 129 is out. So I think between now and end of November, everyone's gonna be busy. KubeCon, post KubeCon, test freeze, and the release itself. So I feel like we can dry run this November and do the cutover in December, because there's gonna be something breaking at some point. So we should do that at post release of 129.
Sounds like a plan.
Thanks for working on this. We've been talking about this for like 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bob Killen sent me a message like a few weeks ago and was like, would anybody want to work on this? And we're like, actually, yes.
Yeah, this is really cool to see. I know the discussion moving it out of test infra has been for a while, so sweet.
Yeah, I'm hoping once we finish like disentangling everything, it will be less imposing for contributors. Test infra has so much going on; it's kind of overwhelming to dig through. And rather than even try to like fix that and document it, we've just tried to keep like moving projects out and saying, okay, you can contribute to like Cube Test 2. This repo is a lot easier to understand.
Cool. Yeah. Any other comments that folks want to chime in with?
Nothing important. I'm just also excited to have all of our source commits separated from the config commits, because that is just not fun for anybody on either side to look at when we're trying to look at the commit history.
Git bisect is going to be so much better for Pro. You like right now you have to do so much manual. Like, okay, ignore all of these commits. It's not bad.
Or it might be. Somebody might have made a change in one of those commits, right?
True. Yeah. Secret like Pro source code change in a config commit.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, speaking as somebody who has this experience literally all the time internally, I agree that it kind of sucks, and it's really nice to have those separated cleanly. It happens far too often internal.
Also, I don't know if I'm sorry, I have only kind of really barely skim it. I don't know if you committed to this yet, but having the possibility to start doing like actual tag releases would be awesome.
Yeah, we can do that with, we fixed up the Go mod in test infra, so that'll be the same in Pro now too. It's really nice that we can go run stuff now. We went way too long without being able to do that.
Well, also just like trying to figure out what's going on with Pro by like looking at the date SHA tags versus the like commit versus the like announcements file is not the best release experience. But when we have a dedicated repo, it should be possible to like get tag versions or something like that.
Wait. All right. I think that was all we had on the agenda. Was there any last minute topics that folks want to mention? Or no?
Yeah, I'm lucky to get in a meeting with Cole over an entire year. So I was looking at basically how we can migrate the rest of the Prow related tools to the community infrastructure, because there's a few things I see, but I don't have a full understanding. So I'm like, maybe next year. I'm talking about this now because December, I'm not gonna have bandwidth to talk about any of this. So I like maybe January we want to think about moving everything related to Prow before move Prow itself. So I need help from Eng Prod at some point. Like this is call for help, because I mostly kids infra would be interested to have use to define 2024 as the last year for Prow to run inside Google. And when I say Prow, everything. So like 2025, Prow.ks.io is the last thing remaining inside Google, and we can just do the migration.
Not
I think that's
quite there yet, but hopefully.
Hopefully. That's basically my focus will like 2024. We finish migrate all the Prow job. We can migrate everything because they have basically still some jobs related to Google itself, like thing syncing, the on-call team, seeking trade. So 2024 is like we move everything out of Google at maximum. We move the tooling related to Prow. 2025 we do the cutover. So I might need Eng Prod next year.
And in particular, you're asking, I think is this particularly focusing on like the artifact storage or like where we're going to store container images? Or is there more?
Yeah, I think that's easy to figure out. That's kind of easy. We can have this conversation during the migration. But basically,
So when we move it out to another repo and we have versions, what we should really start doing is stop having people pull out of the staging, and we should do tagged releases to registry.k.io and promote them. It's a little bit slower. We can have like a couple like test Prows or something that pull from it, but we should point most Prow users to pull through the actual Kubernetes registry with like version releases, so that we can actually serve them cost effectively. And on the community infrastructure. But I think the real thing that we're talking about is at some point we want to stop depending on the like google.com clusters and stuff. And because that's one of the largest expenses that remains. And we want to get everything fitting in the community budget and understand how that works between the different credits we have.
So what do we need on the technical side from us? Because my understanding was that was more of a like funding issue now that we have the new there's a community run Prow instance, right?
There's only build clusters. The services is still the google.com. So we have to finish moving things out of in Google build cluster. And then when we don't rely on the Google build cluster anymore, except like the trusted cluster, then we need to look at actually moving the rest of Prow, the trusted jobs, in the control plane. So yeah, I mean, most of that the community could just like set up themselves. Like we could set up a trusted cluster and like set up new credentials there for the build jobs and stuff. But the services, I think we're gonna actually need to like coordinate something with the folks that are running it right now.
Yeah, because the migration, if you go in the technical detail of the migration, there's a possibility of a cutover. Like we shut down Prow for like a week. Reinstall that somewhere inside the community infrastructure. And more like all of this is technical detail. I think we can figure out like last year, but that's where we need the help from Eng Prod at some point. And not only that, like other tooling inside still running inside Google, like Kernel. I don't basically exactly know how this is running inside Google, how we can set up that inside the community infrastructure, those kind of things. Like
so all the like deployments and stuff are public, but we still need to actually coordinate the credentialed part, and we could also use help from people that have experience running Prow to discuss how we might accomplish migrating a Prow instance in bulk with minimal downtime and chaos. like I'll go ahead and throw it on your mind. One of the things I'm concerned about is we have a bunch of things where the scheduling essentially depends on the in cluster state to know I already ran this job, let's not run it again, and that sort of thing. And we kind of have implicit spreading of job scheduling for interval-based jobs that just happens based on when the config merges, not and when that job has been running since the first time the config merged, and not like actually planned. But if we like cold started the entire Kubernetes prow just from the source config, then all of those interval jobs would schedule at the same time. So like this sort of thing probably needs a little bit of thought for how can we kind of more smoothly do something than just try to like spin up a brand new prow from scratch that's running all of this and not have everything fall over.
Yeah. I feel like I've done this before. I'm trying to remember which team or repo I did this before, but I'm pretty sure I have some experience with doing this switch. There
Well,
will be a
great.
small amount of downtime, but I think we can avoid significant downtime. It is tricky because of the things like the examples that you just said.
Yeah, I'm sure there's more.
Yeah.
So just this is something we're talking about for like, I think over the course of the next year, we should probably be getting ready to do that. You're right. We had a funding issue. We're in much better shape on that, but we still kind of need to figure out where all that's at. And I think I'll just hint that there's also going to be some updates at KubeCon. So I think going into next year, we'll have a lot better idea of what we need to finish making sure everything fits like budget wise. We're in a way better shape now. So now that hurdle's out of the way, I think people are actively moving things to the community clusters still, like just pivoting the jobs between which cluster they schedule to instead of the default that's in google.com. We're going to get closer and closer to that being done. And then we need to figure out how we actually move it to Prow. There's also some fun things where the google.com Prow has a bunch of random credentials that people kind of put in over the years. We're not planning to port like credentials that we don't know anything about. Like we're just making new, we're like, you know, we have credits for this, we'll make a credential, we'll use it. Like we have a whole new Boscos pool and that kind of stuff. There are some people running jobs that will not be able to migrate because they're not giving us like a legit account and they just have some who the hell knows what secret. So that also is going to need a little bit of coordinating for like, FYI, if you're still depending on the like google.com cluster, like we are planning to get rid of that. That's not, and we're not going to just like copy paste your mystery secret.
So does this mean we're going to get rid of like the PR Kubekins service account?
Eventually, yeah. Like I'm hoping like 2024 can be the year that we stop depending on PR Kubekins. And so that's the other sorts of things that we have to coordinate. It's like the log uploads and like we need to get all of that so that it no longer depends on like things people set up 8 years ago. I was talking to Tim the other day and there's still some stuff that depends on the Google Containers project and we literally can't find anyone that like is an IAM owner that will respond. And there's like a GKE cluster in there. We don't know what it's doing. It's super old. Like we're trying to cut that and make sure everything we do now is like publicly discussed, has some config or scripts or something in a repo, and like we know what all this is and the community owns all of it. So that will also be part of this cutover is like there's going to be some remaining mess with like random nonsense that's going on in the old clusters, and we're going to have to give people some notice that like this is going away. We can't bring we can't bring the default cluster with us when we move the services cluster. That's just going to get shut down.
Yeah.
It's also takes some work for us because we're trying to run things a bit more efficiently now that we have real budget. So like everything has to be like resource requests and limits so we can auto scale the cluster instead of just fixed scale. So it's going to take some time, but we've made a lot of progress this year, and I'm expecting sometime in 2024 we'll be pretty seriously talking with you all about like moving it finally.
Yeah. Well, I'm certainly happy and interested to be involved in planning for all of that. I don't think that I will likely to be able to drive much of the execution of that, but I can certainly, help with trying to figure out what all needs to be done and, share some ideas for migration plans and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. In particular, Arnaud, it sounded like you wanted to schedule some meetings about this next year. Please feel free to schedule some
Not
meetings.
meetings, but more like we can do async stuff like
Okay.
comment talks. Like I'm more interested by that. The one thing I really need is basically some kind of guidance. I think that's like the real thing. We need guidance from Enchprop because we don't exactly know.
Yeah, I
We
think the
don't
biggest
fully
thing we
understand
can
how.
use
Yeah.
is just async, like an outline of how does one move a big prow instance? How do you actually do that correctly?
There's a couple
How do
options,
you
so
do
I think we'll
things?
I can pitch some different options and what the alternatives are, but like so we might be better off setting up a new Prow instance and moving over a repo at a time, or just like a couple repos at first to test things out. We might be better off trying to do like copy the Prow jobs over, like actually move the
Yeah.
resources to a new cluster and try to do a more atomic switch.
Somewhere I have an old doc where I like wrote a couple of these, but they're all just theories, and it sounds like you've actually done some before and have some ideas how that might actually go.
I mean, it's all yes, I might have a little bit more idea about this, but at the end of the day, this is a little bit going to be the Wild West, and yeah.
And the
Yeah.
other thing is we'll want to coordinate just between the community and Google. Like, I don't want y'all to take the heat for it, but we do intend to just kind of like cut off the default cluster at some point and say, like, if you're still depending on that, like, too bad. Like, this is insane tech debt. It's going away.
Yeah. I think that on that same vein, like as we like one of the other things we'll probably want to do going forward is like totally like nobody should ever have the words preset service account in their in their job config, in my opinion. Like no job should be doing that. And I know that that's like probably 40% or more of the jobs right now.
Yeah, we need to disentangle some things there. Some of the jobs need to have a service account because they use other tools that need service accounts, and we're avoiding them like provisioning a service account every time because that's a nightmare. But we need to actually find those, sort those out, and start turning off the other job and say, like, you could just workload identity. Like KTemper has really pushed for that. We really do not want like credentials on disks or this sort of thing. Yeah, like we're totally on board. We'd love to. The other thing is it will also make it easier for us at some point to have like central auth and like cross cloud and stuff. Like we really don't want to have heavy dependency on like secrets in the cluster anyhow. And also just like we're running people's code as a service and exposing them to these secrets. So anybody can just like dump these to the log. If we can fully migrate to workload identity, then that finishes mitigating that problem.
Yeah, I think the one thing we want to do in the future from a kit and from an infrastructure perspective is basically rely on short living token for everything regarding authentication to build cluster, because most of the cloud provider are mature enough to provide those kind of identity federation service. So we want to leverage that.
Yeah, we are currently using something called GenCreds, which is a tool we made ourselves to create short-lived tokens for build cluster access that only last 48 hours. But there's actually an even better option now, at least for GKE, which is the GKE auth plugin, which basically does like workload identity magic, or kind of like the same flavor of stuff to make it so that you don't store any credentials at all. And it just gets you, very short-lived tokens on the fly automatically. So,
we have this kind of thing working for some of the other ones, but like we need to migrate everything to it. Mm-hmm. I think we actually have this working where like where we can auth to the Amazon one that way as well, with something similar, but like across clouds, but with the identity from GCP. But like we still, I think the default build cluster, we still run into the thing where like we have the long-lived credential and it expires.
Yeah.
We need to get rid of that cluster.
Yeah. Or at least change. Yeah, we should just get rid of it. Yeah.
I don't know if folks here know. I think Cold knows, maybe Michelle. That cluster is literally from like 1.6. It's been upgraded in place ever since. So no one has ever been able to rethink any config options, basically, that you couldn't just migrate in place. Everything is just one upgrade after another. That is That the proud clusters that we have inside Google are the ultimate tech debt in the project.
And those were like Kubernetes versions where like a lot of stuff was changing too. It was like before Kubernetes was like actually proper, kind of stable.
We had ABAC. We didn't even have RBAC.
Yeah. I mean, we had fun issues where our certificate, like the certificate authority for the cluster, certificates were expiring. Like after like 5 years or whatever. Now I think they've been updated to like 30-year expiries, but yeah, we have some old clusters.
Well, thanks for coming. We'll definitely be picking your brain for it to. I do think we're not quite there, but I think we should be able to in 2024 actually plan this. We probably would have been able to this year if some of the other infra costs hadn't blown up in our face. I think we're way more on top of that now, and we should be able to finish gearing up for that in the short term.
Okay. Well, I will talk to our PMs within Google to make sure that we can at least, like I said, I think it'll be tough for me to get enough time to drive this myself, but I'll make sure that there's at least time for us for planning and helping out with all that.
Yeah, if you can at least just share some ideas, and we also just want to when we actually go to cut over, we want to coordinate with the on-call and try to help make that go smooth for everyone. And then, I mean, hopefully we can even spin up a community one or something, make that I mean that's something else we still have to discuss, right? It's how much involvement the Proud on call wants to continue for if this is a useful test cluster, if we all have too many things going on, and how we work that out to get some community members helping staff or fully staffing. So something else to start thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, I would totally love to see the on-call rotation become totally open source, and it should once we are able to give access to people outside Google. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Also, our on-call rotation is not like it used to be. It's quite easy, especially for there's very few times where on-call is actually needed to do something. So it won't be some big onerous thing that we're trying to ask of the community. It's really just occasionally you need somebody to have keys to the castle in an emergency.
Yeah, I think we'll have to even discuss in Kate's info. Right now we have a couple, the leads basically have break glass, and then we maybe have some individual people for specific projects, but we don't really have anything right now with a rotation. A registry at Kate.io has an issue. It's just Mira, I know one of the leads just deals with it when we're around. I mean, because also to be fair, we really can't have an SLO as just a bunch of volunteers that no one's really doing this. That's their main focus. So I think that will be a shift, and we also need to communicate that to the community. There's no more pinging the on call, or there's a community one or something. That I think that aspect no one's talked about that yet. So just put on everybody's radar, start thinking about this stuff.
Yeah, addressing Ano's comment in the chat about possibly, I don't know how much that's a joke, but possibly migrating Kate's or testgrid.kates.io. I am totally happy to discuss that. I'm trying to figure out push-pull between open source and internal time, for instance, but I am planning to try and dedicate 20% time to SIG testing, at least for the next year. We'll see how that actually goes, question mark. But yeah, I want part of that to be able to focus on whatever is useful for SIG testing, but obviously my experience lies in test grid area, and I'd love to talk about some more useful things to do there, community wise as well. I have been thinking about it a bit, and I think there is more of a path to migrating that, especially in parts if we want to, in next year. And the main thing is just I don't know how much people actually want that to happen or not, which is why I'm kind of pointed to feel free to talk with me about it first, especially on the Kate's infra side. How much do you actually want to manage that? And I can talk about how easy or not it is.
Well, I think the test grid was more like a joke, because I felt 2030 will be accurate to do that. But if we can decouple test grid, Kubernetes test grid from the main test grid, that would be great. So we basically just focus on anything related to the Kubernetes project. That's like the most important thing. For the other companies, I don't know. And that's like planning. We need to have some planning on basically does Google still want to provide tests as a service for other companies, or we just say, okay, we take the Kubernetes project, take care of everything. So I think that's a question mark. Like, I think this conversation need to happen first before we even think about do the migration, how we provide a path or an alternative for any company using TestScript.io, but not on the Kubernetes project, because there's going to be a borderline between those projects and us. Yeah, I think that's like the first thing we need to figure out.
Yeah, I think that is at least in my understanding, like two different parts. One of them is that like currently everybody is on testgrid.k8s.io. I think some of those should probably be separate instances. Google OSS, for instance, is separate from like the K8s managed stuff, and then there's probably other stuff on a like gray line there. And then the other one is the like how much of it is managed versus like community managed independently. So yeah. But yeah, I would be happy to talk about either of those. And hopefully would have some time to help out with it.
I'm looking back at the chat and seeing that Arnaud mentioned Kettle and Triage. Those I know much less about those. Those are going to be a little trickier to try to figure out where those live and what's going on with those.
Triage is running on Prow. I'm not sure where Kettle actually is, and there's a big query that's inside Google, and I think that's going to be it. It's very stateful, and there's like a huge SQLite as well, and it's yeah, it's like a couple hundred gigabytes. It's gonna be I might have access to that. I'm not sure. We're probably gonna have to. We might actually have to. I think if I don't, then like InchProd owns it or something. We're gonna have to get someone escalated access so we can actually get the like data copied over and whatnot. Some of it,
the data itself,
some of it, but it's not.
Yeah, the data itself is not a problem. We can sync that because those are public. But basically, the one thing is like
There's a disk with a SQLite that has. You don't want to start it without that.
Okay.
It's not just a BigQuery. The whole system also has a really large SQLite database on a PV.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, there's like technical guidance is kind of needed from InchProd. So basically, I don't really fully understand some of the tooling running inside Google. So
I don't think anybody that has worked on that is active anymore. Maybe we can get in touch with Grant. I don't know if he remembers it. It's probably similar to me. Like I've touched it at some point, but no one has worked on that in a really long time. The only parts that have been worked on is I had an intern who worked on triage, and I worked with him on that. So the triage end of it, that like very understood, already running on Prow as a job, and it just uploads to GCS, not a problem. The part before triage, the like kettle data stuff, we've kind of just kept it running, and that was like me and Aaron and Grant. The like Prow and TestGrid teams haven't been working with that, and at most I think we might have to poke for IAM access to the infra to move anything that needs moving. But we're just gonna have to look at the code and stuff. I don't think Aaron was the last person to do anything substantial to Kettle, as far as I know. And before that, it was Ryan. And I haven't heard from Ryan in like half a decade.
Yeah, I think my request.
So
my request is like, is InchProd can take a look for next year and see how we can migrate that. I basically want to take 2024 as like an entire milestone to make sure we migrate things. Like things like can InchProd take a look and basically see, like I'm asking, like, please take a look and make that happen, because at some point we need to do that. Like I don't know how things happening inside Google, so I'm putting the request out there.
I think part of the problem also is like traditionally InchProd is technically the owner for some of these, but like I think it's been said, it's not like we have contacts on a lot of these anymore, at least for stuff like Kettle, Triage, even stuff like Bosco's, etc. Where it's like mostly been managed by other people. So I think there's both the migration side, but also like if there's further either development or management going on this, we probably also need some new owners who are willing to get like some expertise there.
Yeah, what
Okay.
I'm trying to say or know is that like Kettle, everything about it is open source other than maybe like, the disk, the data. And anybody who goes and looks at the code right now knows about as much as anyone we can get in contact with. Like
Yeah,
Grant and I have like poked the thing to get it running again. Like we've like kicked over the broken pod, but that's about it. And it's been so long since I've done that. I actually don't even know where that is in GCP. I would actually go look at the source code to like find the project because there's like a make file that will deploy it and it references the project. I don't remember where any of this stuff is. I probably don't have access to it anymore. I'll check, but I that's the main thing. We might need some help inside Google getting access so we can try to copy the data, or we might just have to cold start and just get the BigQuery. There's no one with Kettle expertise on hand. It's just it's the curse of like it runs fine most of the time and it hasn't really needed features, so anybody that worked on it has moved on. So InchProd's not going to be able to do anything there.
Okay.
I can take a look if I still have access to the project itself, because I think I see it mentioned here. But yeah, I think like we're not going to have expertise on it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe at some point we can get help with like shutting down that one so we can spin up another one and not have the two competing or whatever, but like, and like take copy over the like frozen data. But I think otherwise, like as a community, we're just gonna have to figure it out from the source code.
Okay.
Right. Well, I
quick
think
question. Where's Triage hosted from? Do we know that? I know there's a site too that's, I think it's the ProwJob's creating the data for it, but do we know where that's hosted from?
It's like a GCS bucket with a file in it, but the file's in the repo, and it used to be a cron on Ryan's workstation, and then I think I just like change it so it wouldn't expire. And there's like a static page with some JavaScript, and then it loads JSON data from a GCS bucket that's populated by the job. So same thing, like the community has all the access and source code and stuff to sort that out and move it if need be. And we should do something better in the future. That's one thing that will be annoying. All the links are going to break because like we have a redirect to it on go.case.io, but it takes you to the GCS bucket. So when you construct an actual triage query, that's like the spot in the bucket. So all of the old triage links will break if we like take it down. But I mean, the data is ephemeral anyhow. It's like a link to, it would be like if you link to like a test created entry or something. It's like, well, but eventually that's going away. So I think that's fine, and we'll just move it to another bucket, and that's all in the repo.
The triage bucket is community owned currently, so I think it's just
the data storage, but I think not the web page.
Yes. No, the web page
Pretty
is
sure
inside
those
the
are
bucket.
two different buckets.
Okay. Because my
Anyhow,
understanding
we
is
can sort
like,
this out. It's very simple. It's a static. It just gets pushed to the bucket whenever someone actually changes the web page, and the web page hasn't changed in a long time. Much. It's pretty simple. When we overhauled triage, the work was mostly on the Go like processing pipeline, which was Python before, and that's all in the repo, and that runs as a proud job. So moving that's not a problem.
Right. I think we are at time, so unless there's anything else like super urgent to call out, I think I'm just gonna call it there. But thanks everybody for joining in all of the good discussion. Looking forward to a lot of the stuff coming out of this. So awesome. All right. Take care, folks. And yeah, if there's anything else to follow up on, obviously the Slack's always open and whatnot. So please do. Yeah. Have a good rest of the day.